returns on stories this month at City. Better the story, the more buttons you get. You can't get any buttons without a good story. Factual, actual, fictional, satirical. It's up to you.
Great. Okay. Given my post-contemporary interest in narrative formations that are reflective of both physical truth, but also kind of pull from the meta-narratives of that fact to evolve into a more fantastical framework. This story is grounded in the prior configuration of bank purchase, which was based on tasks accomplished and credits attributed for jobs. And I would like to use that to frame the parameter of my story today, which is that I left. I checked out. And in that checkout, I think a lot of things happened for everything without myself. And in that extraction, everything seemed to be reconfigured in a certain way. That there was a kind of opening up of a certain amount of space. There was a relaxation. There was a sense of camaraderie and revelry, and a sense of absence. And that absence, I think, mostly in certain spaces that didn't catalog or register that absence, but allowed that absence just to percolate as a slow murmur and simmer in those environs. Enabled something else, which is that where I went in my checking out was a place that is notorious for a certain kind of environmental configuration called fog. And that fog is a mist that is drawn from the ocean and swept onto the land and settles there. And my vision as I was departing was that I was going to live amidst this fog, that I was going to kind of absolve within the fog. And in that fog, language would appear, visions would expand and contract, constellations would form, the dew of an early morning mist would reside on my closed eyelids. And instead, I got no fog. Not one small, tiny bit of fog. And instead, from the moment I arrived till the moment I departed, the sun shone and beat down like the Dickens, warming the earth beneath and allowing all things to grow before their eventual and short collapse. And that in of itself is something to be said, which I think the lesson learned is that we never get what we want, nor what we expect. But we get something else. And that something else is always the fact of looking in the other direction just enough so that you can see the light and not the pulsating round circle of the sun.
Well, if I do remember correctly, this is the story of the sun and the moon and how they came to be. Long ago, the sun and moon both burned brightly, much brighter than they do now. And they loved each other very, very much. But the sun was very hot-tempered, and one day she tore herself to pieces with her fiery passion and love for the moon. And she scattered herself all through the heavens. And so the moon, dutiful to her as always, traveled through all of the heavens, picking up the pieces, the many, many pieces, and put her back together. But of course, the cracks were still there. And she was weaker than she was. And so, again, one day, weakened as she was and in her state, she tore herself up again. And it continued. But the moon, faithful as always, continued traveling through the heavens to pick up the pieces and put his love back together. And so this has continued to this day. And as you see in the sky, the moon is much dimmer. For with his dedication, he has grown weary. And so now we see every day the sun burning brightly, her lover in the background, the moon, who no longer burns as brightly. And at night, she tears herself to pieces once again, and the moon spends the night picking up the pieces and putting her back together again for the next day. But one day, it is likely that the moon will burn out, and the pieces will never be reassembled again. And that is the story of the sun and the moon.
Okay. Well, there was a small dusty patch of land somewhere south of north and north of south, and it was uninhabited for a very, very long time, except for some small crab-like creatures that had antennas and 11 arms, and they were kind of the only intelligent life form on that planet for a long time.
Planet. Sorry, go on.
I'm sorry. So in this country. Oops, I've outed myself. Country. And so yes, and then in 1327, Van Casca de Goma, who was one of the explorers I'm sure you've heard of in your history books, he came in a canoe. He just felt like getting away from it all. Exploring had just been such a challenging business for him. All that bullshit with the co-navigational stuff, and so he just set out in a canoe. And actually, he thought he was landing in the West Indies, but he really landed on this dry, uninhabited patch of land. And so, you know, he was kind of bummed out. He didn't know what he wanted to do, and he just pulled up on shore, and he just sat there, and the crabs were running by his feet. And day turned to night, night turned to day, day turned to night again. And when the seventh star aligned with the seventh wave on the sea, just past his seventh finger, started beaming down on him, it was as if an intergalactic transmission had occurred, and suddenly these beams of light shone down on all of these crab-like creatures. And Fernasco de Vagoma was just kind of enraptured, and at that moment they began to grow arms and legs and take on the form of humanoids. At the exact same moment, it was like a cosmic orchestra started, and it started playing like Devo songs, and let's see what else was happening. A little bit of some Blondie was happening too, and the people emerged out of these crab-like forms, and they had just been waiting to be discovered. You know, imperialism gets a really bad rap, but in this case it was really for the best. And so that was the beginning of New Wavusia, and they got up and danced with the explorer and kind of initiated him into their customs, and now we feel it's our mission to immigrate and move beyond and enter into other countries. So that's why I'm here. I've got a job opportunity at the Bureau of the Collective Unconscious.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, okay.
Heard great things.
This one time, this person gave me a really hard time, off and on, back and forth from week to week, depending on which week I was there.
Only one time.
Well, I guess it's a continual thing. Anyway, so she would oftentimes be perplexed at my presence, and then the next week would be jubilant and overjoyed at it, until eventually one day I killed her.
Oh, sorry. This was a sad story, wasn't it?
Yes.
Sorry.